Welcome everybody to the October edition of the Twin Cities Tableau User Group. If you haven't answered this question yet, feel free to continue to chat your answers. But for now, we shall move on. If I can advance my slide. A couple of notes. We are gonna skip the month of November. Like every year we usually do skip the month of the conference, just so it's not too much all at once. We're actually having our session this October. So what we're gonna do is skip November to avoid the election, to be honest, and also Thanksgiving. So our next meeting will not be until December. And sorry, I'm trying to keep track of the waiting room here. And then I think it's actually important for us to have a quick moment of silence to just recognize that things are not normal right now. And while we are all, struggling to some degree with trying to, maintain and figure this out and just do the best that we can with the pandemic and the coming election and a lot of the racial justice tension that we have been experiencing over the last few months. I just want to take a moment of silence and just recognize that some shit can be heavy for us, and we don't always have to just pretend like none of that exists and go on about our day. So let's just take a few moments in silence to recognize those hardships. All right. Thanks for allowing that. I just think it's important to do. We can't just pretend that it's not there. So I want to acknowledge that for everyone and let everyone know that this is a space that's acceptable to do that. Okay. Our agenda today. We're going to get to know a member, probably do 2 of those right off the start. And then if we run into any technical glitches between presentations, we'll probably jump in and try to do one of those as well. We have some great presentations today. We have John Grogan from Coolibar, who is going to share with us how they used Tableau Prep to overcome some data problems that they created for themselves. And then we have our very own Luke Stanke, who is going to show us, give us some pro tips for tables in Tableau. And when he sent me this title, I was like, "What's your title, Luke?" And he said, "Tables." I was like, I think it was something like, table tips for Tableau or something. And I thought he just misspelled Tableau, and he didn't. So that is correct. So we'll see tables in Tableau from Luke. And then if we have time, we'll jump into the virtual edition of the Best Thing I Learned or / group therapy, which if you haven't participated in that before, it's where we really open up the floor. And if someone has, if they learned something like a quick tip or trick that has saved them time and they just wish they knew, like, 6 months ago or a year ago, and want to share that with the crew, please do so. And then alternatively, if you are struggling with something particular, that's an opportunity for you to try to describe the problem to the group, and then we collectively try to solve it on the fly. And I think we've actually had a pretty good track record with these kinds of things. I think it's a little bit easier to do in person, but we are now actually running this this as a meeting. So each one of you has the ability to unmute yourself and share your screen. So if there is some sort of screen share that you feel like you won't get in trouble for sharing, and that would help in explaining the problem to us, that's also an option. So it's a fun thing. A couple of upcoming events here. Let's see here. I made this list before this date, so ignore the ones that are already passed. Looks like up next we have the Twin Cities Alteryx user group, and then of course make sure that you vote on election day. If you have any questions about that, you can reach out to me personally and I will help you solve them. 11/11 is the Women Who Code Hack Night. 11/19 is the next meeting of the She Talks Data Book Club, where they'll be reviewing Ruth Bader Ginsburg's book, My Own Words. Yes, there we go. And then, like I said, our next TUG meeting will be on December 10th, and we do need presenters. So if you have something short, medium, long, interesting that you would like to share with the group, does not have to be a super polished presentation. This is a safe space to just come as you are and practice the presentation you might want to give somewhere else. So definitely a good space to share knowledge. And then on the next slide here, I know that there's one person in the audience who does have an event or an announcement to share, but we're going to start opening up the platform each meeting for anyone else. If you have an event you want to let us know about, or some other data Tableau related announcement, this is the time to do that. So while you think about whether you have an announcement or not, I'm going to let Nicola, is it Nikolai? Nikolai, are you here? Trying to scroll through the list to see if he's on. Well, it's in alphabetical order and I don't see him. Okay, well, I can tell you that Nikolai was going to mention that there is an Einstein user group coming up. I think it's either next week or the week after. He sent me the link, so I will find that. I'll dig that out of my email and I will chat it in the chat box for anyone that's interested in learning more about Einstein and what it's capable of and how it integrates with Tableau and all that fun stuff. So
Tableau CRM, technically now.
Is it? Okay, Tableau
Yes.
CRM. I did not know that. Okay, does anybody else have anything that they would like to share with the group? Feel free to just unmute yourself.
Yeah, I've got something to share with the group. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
You know, a lot of things are changing with this COVID, and about 2 weeks ago, they laid me off. And I'm not, it's just part of the problem. Airmark's bulk of our business is in entertainment, venues, concerts, sporting events, those kinds of things. So there'll probably be more layoffs. But in any case, I think there are other people in the group that are in the same boat. And there may be people in the group that need to hire people.
Mm-hmm.
So it might not be a bad idea just for our group in general, just to have a, help wanted board or something to that effect.
Yeah, for sure. What about the LinkedIn page?
What's that?
The LinkedIn page, Robert?
Yeah.
You could post that you are available and seeking opportunities.
Yeah, I guess that'd be a good place to put it, I guess. I hadn't thought of that, but I'm just getting started with my search. I'm not sure I want to search. Anyway, I'm pretty close to retirement, so, you know, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, if you need a reference, let me know.
Okay. You're a pretty good fiction writer, I hope.
No, I'll just make sure that I include that you remind me of Phil Hartman.
Oh, yeah.
And your looks and your sense of humor.
There you go. That'll get me on board right away.
I mean, it's enough for me. I would hire you.
Okay. Well, that's good, but we'll see. See what happens. I mean, there's a pretty high demand for old white guys, so, you know. So that's it.
I like how you keep it real.
Yeah, it's real. It gets pretty real real quick. But
yep.
No
Love
problems.
All right. Well, thanks, Robert. But yeah, I would definitely encourage you to post that, and anyone else that's in the same boat or looking for positions to just post that on the LinkedIn page. I get a lot of people who ask me to post positions on the LinkedIn page, and I'm happy to do that. But they're like, all of you guys have the ability to do that as well. So feel free.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm going to go. I'm going to disappear now. Watch this. Watch. Everybody looking? Watch. Ha ha ha.
There goes Robert. All right. Does anyone else have anything to share?
Anyway.
All right. Last call before we move on. Okay. Let's see here. Get to know a member. So how this works is that we will sit in awkward silence while I wait for someone to volunteer to do the get to know a member. And then at some point, I will just pick someone. So do we have any volunteers? These are just the sort of the general questions that you can try to follow and answer. But if you want to go off script, you are more than welcome to. It looks like we have Matt, who's got his hand up. Matt, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I have unmuted myself. Can you see me, hear me? No, you can't see me.
No, we see a black screen.
The black screen. Now, if I turn on the right webcam, we might get somewhere here. Hey, there I am. My name is Matt Wells. I work for Experian, which is one of your big 3 credit bureaus. I have this incredible title, Senior Director of Enterprise Data Governance and Integration. And when I figure out what that means, I'll let you know. As such, I own the new enterprise data lake at Experian. Experian is a company that buys and sells a lot of data, but I'm in charge of the data about Experian. And so we are moving all of our data and virtualizing it all in the data lake. And then guess what? We're running Tableau on top of it to do our reporting. And so I am spending a lot of time curating data sets for Tableau and curating data sets that are then further curated using Tableau Prep, which is highly entertaining. We have data from our billing systems, data from our accounting systems, data from Salesforce.com. I am a new user of Tableau, only about 2 years. I am really good at getting data to the point where we can validate it against the original data source, but I am not a visualizer. You don't ask the colorblind guy from Cleveland to do visualizations. And the feature that we're struggling with the most is getting prep flows to automate. That's where we're having challenges, especially when the data is being drawn from more than one place. So thank you. I find these Tableau user group things very, there's always a nugget here. So thank you for having these.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. I know that John's presentation touches on that just a little bit, but that could be something to bring up during the group therapy also, and talk about whether you're trying to use Conductor to do that, or just some sort of custom script. Yeah, so we can talk about that later if there's time. Thank you. Welcome. All right, let's do one more. Can I get one more volunteer?
Hi, can I talk?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Saurabha Sadanand. So, what company do I work for? I was working for Wells Fargo Home Mortgage until last week. My contract got ended last week. What is your role? So, I have been a business objects developer, working, for several companies as a contractor. But recently, I got an opportunity at Wells to get exposed to Tableau, and we were working on several, proof of concepts using Tableau, and that's where I started getting interest to learn more and more. And I got certified recently, and I'm planning to take further certifications up. And so that's where I started attending. I attended the TC-ish recently, and that's where here I am. I want to build my career in Tableau going forward. So, I would like to hear tips from you, like where is the best place to, look for jobs, and what is the prep for, getting started in Tableau.
Awesome. And do you say your name Sarava? Is that, am I saying that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you're very close.
Very, very close. I like how you're like close enough. Okay. Well, maybe you can train me on that a little bit better afterwards. Well, welcome to the group. We're happy to have you. And I would say that this group, being networked and part of this group, is actually a really great way to find opportunities. Like, as Robert mentioned, he was looking for opportunities as well. So the LinkedIn page, just kind of posting a little bit about yourself and what you're available to do, could not hurt. Because I think even in this pandemic, there's definitely still a need for these kinds of skill sets. It's just become a little bit harder to connect the supply with the demand. So, and then when we eventually will start meeting in person again, I think that just sort of multiplies the benefit in that respect too. So we'll get back there one day.
Do you recommend any specific group on LinkedIn?
We have the Twin Cities Tableau user group LinkedIn page.
Okay.
So if you just type in Twin Cities Tableau user group on LinkedIn, you'll just request to get access to the page, and then one of the organizers will let you in, and then you're part of that club. There's also a meetup group for the Twin Cities Tableau user group, but I don't think that Meetup does a very good job of it's not a very good communication tool for your members. So I would direct you towards LinkedIn, that group, but then also set up a search on LinkedIn or some of these job boards with some keywords around data analytics, Tableau, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So it's got to be kind of a multi-pronged approach to be effective. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for volunteering. All right. So I think that's all I have. Now I'm going to turn it over to John. John Grogan from Coolibar is gonna show us what a one-person team can do with data from SAP B1 and Tableau Prep.
Okay, where am I here? I think oh, here we are on the screen too. All right, am I sharing right now?
Not yet.
How about now? Why is this not working? We practiced this before too, and for some reason, it is not working.
It's harder with dual screens.
Serena, you gotta stop sharing.
Oh, okay. Let me stop share and make it easier for you.
There we go.
Okay, sorry. It was me. I threw you off. I'm sorry.
Okay. It is still not wanting to share my screen. So it is not wanting to share my screen. Is that now that seemed promising?
Yep. We're getting somewhere. Now we can see it. Yay!
Okay, here we are. Okay, is this the right screen? Are we seeing the notes too or no?
Nope, we're not seeing your
Okay,
note.
perfect. Here we go. All right, so here we go. Real quickly, I'm just going to take you through brief introductions. I know time's critical here. I'll talk about the problems that Coolibar created for itself relative to data, how Tableau Prep solved these problems, a couple of features I'll take you through, and then I'll get some questions at the end. So first, let me just introduce you to Coolibar. We are a web retailer of sun protective clothing. We are in St. Louis Park. It's a medium-sized business, I would say, with about 80 employees, just for you to get a scale of how big it is. But it is a fairly complex business. We are on the web, but we have other channels as well. We have multiple warehouses. We sell internationally. There's a few million records of invoices. So we do need a robust finance, a set of finance and reporting tools, but we're resource constrained. So we don't have, there's limits to what we can do. I've had a bunch of different jobs. I'm now a data analyst. I've been using Tableau for about 18 months, but I do other stuff as well. So I'm certainly no expert in Tableau is what I'm trying to say. So let me just talk through the problems that we had. So initially, this is how we were rolling out Tableau. This is the idea that we run SAP B1, and then initially we had some custom SQL written that produced extracts that were on a server, and then we ran reports off of that. That was the initial plan. So what did we do wrong? So the first thing is that we're relying on our consultant that hosted the Tableau server to write the SQL for us. We don't have somebody on staff that can do that. And we underestimated how frequently the SQL would have to be tweaked. And then the consultant had a lot of difficulty keeping a SQL writer on their staff. So a couple of people quit, a couple of them, they hired somebody, the person just didn't show up. And it was months before where there was nobody on staff we just didn't have access. So the question, of course, is, well, why don't you just hire one locally? The problem with that is that Coolibar is the only company in the Twin Cities running SAP B1 with the HANA structure. We did not know that. And I don't think we would have made the choice that we did if we knew that. But basically, there's no local talent. There's nobody around that understands the data structure of SAP B1. And there are literally hundreds of tables, and there are hundreds of fields in each table. It's very cryptic. Unless you know your way around that system, it's very difficult to get in there and start writing SQL code. How did we solve the problem? So that top implementation there is what we started with. And what we did, if you look at the bottom there, is we replaced the custom SQL with Tableau Prep. And this came about because I ran into Brad Cantor, who may or may not, he's a member of this group, and he may or may not be on the call right now. He said he would be. And I told him my woes. And then he said, Serena just quit her job and she's now a consultant. You might give her a call. And I did, and Serena did. She showed up and we hired her as a consultant and she worked it out. But I wanted to point this out to show the power of this group, that if you talk to people about your problems, they'll help you solve them. And with this one conversation, we were stuck for months and we were really in trouble. And one conversation with Brad, and things got moving again. So I'd like to thank both Brad and Serena for helping us through this. Okay, so quickly, a how-to is, I'll go through this kind of quickly, but if you when you open up Tableau Prep, in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a little plus sign next to connections. This up here says connections. You click that plus sign, and then it lists all the different data sources you can connect to. And way down at the bottom of the list is SAP HANA down here. So you just hit SAP HANA. This screen pops up, the one in the middle here. You type in your server information, username and password, off you go. You get to this third screen on the right here. And in the lower left-hand corner, it's hard to see, but there's a little box there that says Custom SQL SQL. And you just drag that into the white space and you'll get, and the next page pops up. And then all you do, the fourth step is to type in this wee little bit of SQL code over here on the far left. Select star, select all from, and then the blue box is covering the name of our database. So you can see why it did that. But so select from database name, and then the table name in this case is OITM. And then you'll get this on the right here. And if one thing that's gonna be hard to see, what pops up is every single field in that table. And this is immensely useful. It gives you the field name, and then it shows you off on the right what populates that field. It's a sample, it's not everything. And how it samples, I don't know, it's a little mysterious, but it shows you what's in that field. And this is amazingly useful when you're learning your data system, you're doing it yourself, you don't have a pro helping you or somebody who really knows the system. You can go through and you can just scroll down and pick the fields that you want. And then off you go, you're almost done. Then you've got the table and the fields that you want, and you're in really good shape at this point. And just to point out, I just want to show, it's going to be hard to read here, but this one field has 469 fields to it. Imagine if you're trying to work with a SQL writer that doesn't know your data system. The first thing that person's going to ask is, what's the table name? What's the field name? And you're going to say, I have no idea. And you've got to go through and do this work anyway to find, to tell the SQL writer, I need, this thing here, code bars. It's going to be really hard to do. So this is an extremely useful feature of Tableau Prep. Next up, you put this little box is what pops up after that. You can rename this to whatever you want it to be. And then the plus sign after that box shows you you just hit that plus sign and it shows you all the different things. I'll go through most of this one at a time. But the clean step is what you use mostly. It pops up, lets you see what's in there. You can rename things. Most of you have played around enough to see that and you know what that clean step is. This is kind of what it looks like after you pull it in. This table INV1 is just the invoice lines in our database. And all you have to do to make a join is to drag one clean step on top of the other one, and it will produce a join for you. And then you'll get this screen down below, which again is extremely helpful, where it'll show you the two tables you're joining and on what field it's joining. It's pretty clever about knowing which field to join on. You can, by playing right here, you can choose either an inner join, a left join, or a right join. So again, you don't have to know any SQL to know how to do this. You can just visually do this. And then it shows you the results. And if you look, there's an orange. It's color coded. There's orange and there's blue. The blue, and on these tables or on these fields here, when it comes in, if there's a blue bar, it means it came in from the blue side of the join. Off to the right, there's orange bars. It'll show you it came in from the orange side of the join. So you know where the fields came from, the values in the field, is the join working the way you expect it to, and it gives you a sample of the data at the bottom. So this is, and it's really pretty simple. You can learn this. Serena showed me, in half a day how to do this. And then with some practice, you can do it yourself within a couple of days of playing with it. You can start really creating some pretty complex joins, some pretty complex flows that can get you the data that you need. Other cool features that I have found that are immensely useful for our data is the pivot feature. In a lot of databases, you'll find a very, very highly normalized data. So in this particular instance, our item code, and then we have a bunch of different price lists. This is made up data. Don't worry about that. I'm not showing you data. But if you were to join that, for instance, with your invoice data, you would get 4 rows for every line of invoice every time that SKU showed up. And so then you had to get into writing some fairly complex, or you have to write level of detail expressions. The number of lines in your data set get big. And you can pivot it from rows to columns, and you can get this on the right, where you get one line with the SKU and then 4 different price lists on one line. And that saves a lot of data. It saves a lot of bloat in your data set, and it's much easier to work with. Similar is an aggregate, where if the same thing, there's a SKU, we have these warehouses and more actually. And a similar thing, it'll crunch all this stuff down into one line. So that same idea, you can clean up your data set, make it a lot easier to work with. You have a lot of control over what you can do. And you can make either generalized systems or very specific for a particular report. And then calculated fields, almost all the Tableau functions are available in prep, not all of them, but most of them are, and you can concatenate, you can do all the text operations, all the functions on the mathematical ones as well. It's really quite easy to do that if you know those. This is just a quick look at one of the flows that I put together. It comes together, I did this in a few hours, right? It's not that hard to do. And while you're doing it, you learn an awful lot about your data and how your data is structured. And it makes you a much better report writer, because you really understand the underlying data. You know how it works. When you're getting a weird result, a result you don't expect, you can go back and you can look at the data and say, okay, I need a level of detail expression here in order to get rid of some duplicates, whatever. It's really, really handy to do that. And then just a few examples of some of the cool calculated fields. This one up here, change role, on this particular data set, state came in as just text. You can change the role to a geographic role so it knows. You can have a calculated filter. In this particular filter, I just wanted to see any item that started with a 5. That's pretty, again, very handy if you want to narrow up your data set. And then you can also have fairly complicated ones, where this one down here in the lower left is to change the sign of returns so that returns didn't come in negative. Again, very simple, intuitive, easy to understand. All the changes that you make at any step in the flow are recorded. And it's very easy to either edit those with hit the little pencil there, or you can also delete that step. And if you made a mistake, you just delete it, off you go, no problem. When you're ready to publish it, it's the output step. And you just, you can either publish as a data source, or another cool feature is that you can save your flow to a file. So you can save your flow to a file, and then you can test the data. When you think the flow is good to go and you have everything worked out, then you can publish it to the server. And again, and this down here is a new feature that I've played with. I'm not sure the usefulness of it, but you can either create the table or you can append to the table. So if you have a set of data and you'd say there's a lot of lines, maybe like the general ledger where the history doesn't change at all, you can just add on to the last time you ran it, rather than recreate the whole table. And that saves a lot of processing time, and for big data sets, it could be really useful. So refreshing the data, there's 2 ways to do it. You can do it, just pay Tableau the $8 a month per user. I think that's not cheap, and it is a bit annoying. It seems like they get enough money out of this, and they have a product that they should make it a little bit easier to do this. It just sort of, It's annoying if you have a lot of users. That's not cheap. The other way to do it is you can set up batch files and Windows Scheduler. There's a little bit of IT work that has to be done, but it's not that bad. It's a little bit harder to work with, but all in, you'll save a lot of money. And if you search it on the internet, off you go. It's not hard to do. It's not hard to figure it out. It's really pretty straightforward, but you do give up a little bit. So there's a trade-off. And that's what I have. So I'm certainly willing to entertain any questions about any of that. I will share.
That was
Does
great, John.
your system do deltas, or does it just create whole new tables?
I generally create all new tables. I am playing with when you say delta, what do you mean?
Well, rather than let's say there have been some updates since the last time the data table was refreshed, rather than redo everything, just modify and then use effective dating to update certain records. And
Yeah, like I said, most of what we do changes. So orders change, invoices change. The history does in fact change, right? And for instance, inventory changes. So you have to rewrite everything. The great bulk of what we do has to be rewritten. I am testing this on our general ledger. Theoretically, the general ledger should not change. And it's a great example because there's a lot of lines in the general ledger. I've not verified that it works exactly. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying I haven't gotten to that point yet. So I've built the two data sets, and I'm actually was comparing them yesterday. I can't issue a final verdict on that though yet. So, but it seems like it certainly ran much quicker. I can tell you that.
John, did you take advantage of the ability to copy any steps
Oh yeah.
or components?
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool too, because if you do the same steps over and over again, you can copy from a previous flow and just paste it in, and you can save a huge amount of work. So if you do it once, and that happens a lot with our product attributes. So you'd be surprised how many attributes a piece of clothing has, and they're all on a different table, right? So color has its own table. You know, is it striped? What's the thickness of the stripe? Where are the buttons? You know, the size table, all this stuff. You'd be surprised. And so almost every flow has to have all that data in it. And so I'll end up copying probably to start it, probably the links between 15 to 16 tables just to get it going, just to get the product data set. And then whether I attach it to inventory or I attach it to invoices or returns or anything like that, yeah, that it's awfully handy. That is a time saver.
And so far, do you feel like the use cases are more report specific for the outputs, or more sort of, you know, trying to build a data set for broader purposes?
I do both actually. So I have broader purposes are marrying inventory and sales together. And the idea being I can answer any question about, it's a huge deal in retail. What's your sales rate and what's your inventory? Almost every time anybody asks a question, they want to know both those things. And so I make that data set as broad as possible to answer any question. But for specific things, I do build smaller, tighter Tableau prep flows. So for instance, there's a very tight yet fairly complex one about freight, tracking freight and comparing it to the invoices we get from UPS and the Postal Service and FedEx, and the Postal Service is a complete mess, in case anybody was wondering. It's true.
No.
You know, so trying to get their invoices to match what they, you know, it's very hard. And so that data set is more complex than you would imagine, but it's for one specific thing, and I run it just for that. And so I do both. I have both broad ones that answer a lot of different questions, and are open to be used a lot of different ways, and also very specific ones for very specific questions.
Got it.
Hi,
What
John.
other?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, hi, John. This is Pam. I'm just wondering if you've ever used Alteryx and if you prefer one tool over the other, or if there's something you could do in Tableau Prep that you couldn't do in Alteryx or vice versa.
I've never used Alteryx.
Okay.
So I've been at this for about 18 months. And like I said, I'm not an expert at this. So I've never used Alteryx, so I can't really compare the two.
They're similar, Pam. I've used them both. I think that Alteryx is capable of doing some really robust things. I mean, Tableau Prep serves most people's needs and can do some sophisticated things as well. But I feel like Alteryx is probably the next step above and beyond that. However, I think it does require a bit more technical skill, you know, the ability to write some custom SQL and just a little bit more of a tech background.
Yeah.
So, but they are very, very similar. And for most purposes, you could use either one. So for a lot of people, it comes down to price.
Yeah, definitely. Quite a difference there.
Yep. And Tableau Prep does produce a proprietary type of file called Hyper, and that's intended to be just, you know, really performant when used in conjunction with Tableau itself. So, good question though.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John? John, are you running your batch refreshes every day, more than once a day? How often are you doing that?
It depends on the flow. Okay. So some of them we run as often as an hour, every hour. That's for the smaller ones typically that that people need constant updates on. One is deliveries, when things are going to show up, because that changes a lot and people really need to know that. But most of the other things we run them before people get to work in the morning, and then once mid-morning, and sometimes again in the afternoon. So we run them 3 times a day, most of them, and then other ones we run them every hour, the smaller ones that are more time critical. And there's some that, quite frankly, I run manually once a month. The freight one I run once a month.
Got it. And you guys are happy with the performance?
We are happy with the performance. It takes a little bit. It takes some time, but you know, if you're running it when no one's at work, no one cares. Right.
So, John, I have a question. So, you said you need to run those batches, but is there a way to schedule the flow?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part of that.
I think she's asking about automating the batches, the batch.
Yeah.
Well, the batches are automated. So our consultant runs these on the server. We're 100% cloud, so there's nothing on site, right? So we rely on other people to set these up. So they've set it up. I've seen what they've done. It's not complicated. I just send them the schedule that I want it to run on. They set it up, off we go. But it's not complicated. They use Windows Scheduler, a batch file. There's a wee little bit of a JSON statement that's like 3 lines long to get it to go. It's not hard to do this. It's a little finicky when you change something and you got to replace the old flow, go back in, you know, you've got to make sure you do that right, but it's not hard to set this up, and it runs well. It's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, John. That was super interesting, and it brought back some
memories for you, Serena.
Good bad memories. Yeah. That was a fun project. And then just FYI for any of you that were interested in more about Tableau Prep versus Alteryx, Katrina, my on-point friend here, has posted a link in the chat if you wanted to check that out. All right. Thanks again, John. You're the best. Now we have our resident Zen master, Luke Stanke.
It's I appreciate that. The resident of the user group. it's good to see a lot of familiar faces online. And I think, Serena, you were remarking at the beginning of, before actually we had kicked any of this off, that it'll be great when we can finally all meet in person again.
Yes, it will. I dream of those days.
And I'm waiting for my screen share to kick in. I think my Zoom is about to crash, so I might have to sneak in and out.
Well, we can still hear you, but your video is frozen and we're not seeing your screen.
Yep, I'm just gonna crash this and
All
I'll
right,
be
cool.
back.
We'll do a get to know a member then.
Sounds good.
Do we have any volunteers for get to know a member? Or shall I pick? Oh, I lost my participant screen. There we go. How about Amelia?
Hello.
Amelia, there you are. Hello, Amelia, tell us about yourself.
Sure. I'm new to the group. Amelia Gasley. I am an analytics and insight manager at Summit Companies over in Mendota Heights. Newer to Tableau, but I've used it in the past. I just haven't done a lot of building. Excuse me. And I'm also using Alteryx as well. So I'm enjoying both tools, and I just wanted to see what this is about, and I'm interested in hearing more.
Sweet. Is that Summit? What does the company do? I'm thinking
Yeah,
beer, but I might be
No,
wrong.
no, Summit fire protection. So we do
Oh.
fire protection services. So think about your sprinkler installs, your sprinkler inspections, fire extinguishers, etc. So we do a lot of construction, but we also do a lot of service and maintenance, fire alarms, fire extinguishers, etc.
Got it. So if you start a fire because you drank too much Summit beer, you can grab your fire extinguisher and put
Yes,
it
you will most likely see our name on one of those tags, especially here in the Twin Cities. So you'll see
Cool.
Summit companies more than you think. So
Well, welcome. Glad to have you as part of the group, Amelia.
thank you.
Luke, are you squared away? You're muted. Okay, he's not squared away. He's still on the struggle bus. Okay, well, maybe we could, oh.
And I'm good. You can see
you're
me.
good. All right.
And it did not crash this time.
All
And I've got a
boxes are checked.
presentation ready to go. Okay. I'm going to talk today. So, it's great to be back virtually, and can't wait till we're all in person sometime in the future, whenever that is, when we are all in a safer spot. Yeah, I also was like looking through the list, and we've got quite the we've got a great little list of people here. We've got a lot of regulars I see running through. We've got hey, Alex, former colleague Alex is on, which he's a past regular. And then I'm pretty sure that I saw another Zen master in for a while. It looks like he left, but Mark Reed was in for a little while as well. So there was some other folks that were sneaking in to catch a peek of our presentations. And that's the great part of being virtual right now, that people are pretty much everywhere. And Mark's all the way in Europe, so he's got a late night. Anyway, I'm going to talk about tables. And I'll do my best to go through and talk about all the cool stuff and why tables. And I personally love tables because my clients love tables, and it's just a matter of spicing those up to make them interesting. So just a little bit about myself. As Serena mentioned, two-time Zen master now. I've been using Tableau since 2013. I actually used it way back in 2009 when I was helping assess it for the University of Minnesota, in which we said that no-go to it. It just wasn't a comprehensive tool. So I've definitely had some experience with it going back a long time. And now I help inherited a community initiative called Workout Wednesday, and which we post weekly challenges. This week it was actually my turn to post one, so it's a mobile challenge. I also write blogs almost every week at this point, and sometimes I make a YouTube video and post it on our data coach, youtube.com/data coach. I like to just talk about my own progression when I'm setting this up, because I started out, the top left is my first Tableau public visualization. It's SAT scores or ACT scores for Minnesota. And actually I have a series of these visuals that were embedded into a story, and it was like interactive visualization. I started doing some really fun stuff, like, you know, getting data from the StubHub API about all the Minnesota Twins games and all the tickets, and trying to like find the best value, where they were, when they were, how to get them, maybe buy them, like, again, for my own advantage. And then I started creating some more fun stuff too, which is like this Harry Potter with a stretch chord diagram, all built in Tableau, by the way, all of these. And more recently, I've spent a lot more time just rethinking about how we interact with Tableau at a much more you know, basic level, much more thoughtful level. I think when it comes down to it is like, hey, our audience love tables. So I spent a lot of time this year overthinking how to use tables in Tableau. And I'm going to share some of those thoughts today. And I'll show hopefully enough on how to build it so that when we wrap up here this afternoon, you know, I'll be able to cover it off. This is, you know, I've got my Tessellation hat on. I started a consulting firm like 2 years ago, and we do analytics training on a platform called Data Coach. And we're in Minneapolis, of course, because that's where we are located out of here. First, I usually have this slide up and I have something witty to say about our website, but I do not remember what it is. So the last thing, just so you a little bit more about me to make it a little more human, is that I have a 2-year-old daughter, and there's some pictures of her most recently over here in the corner. She dressed up as Mickey Mouse for Halloween this year. So since we're not quite there yet, but it doesn't really, time doesn't matter in 2020. Any time it makes sense to share. And what I want to talk about is really tables. And I want to start with some real basic principles about tables. And we're going to show you how I just, like, even in the most basic sense of when I'm working with tables in Tableau, I format them. And number one is I want to just use a readable font size. I think we all are guilty of doing this. If we've worked in Tableaus, we just like, we need to make a table. We need to cram as much information together as possible. We pick like size 6, size 4 font, just like get it in there. We don't really put much spacing in there. We don't, and use the default formatting, whatever it does. Like, we don't really think about it. So I'm going to show you how to do that through these 4 steps. And then I'm going to actually dive in and do the really cool stuff. So first, how do I create tables? Here's an example of a table that I would go about creating. And I just want to actually build this out in real time to show you the subtle differences. I think sometimes it's just calling out those differences of what and why and how they sort of come together. So I'm just going to go into the Superstore data set. If you're not familiar, it's the very standard data set that comes with Tableau. It's got orders by customer, by day, for 4 years of data, but all I'm interested in is customer. So I'm just going to pull up customer name here onto rows, drag and drop that. Tableau's got some default formatting. It chooses row banding. I personally sort of avoid the row banding, but then there's some metrics in here as well. So I've got a lot of metrics already pre-built in this, but I'm just going to double click and bring out sales. I'm going to find profit. I'm going to bring out profit by double clicking it. It'll create measure names at the top and put measure values on text. So we're building a text table. And then I think there's like profit ratio in here too. I'll double click and it'll automatically bring that in. And then I'm going to attempt to bring in a third here, which is order ID. Sorry. Order ID, I'm going to bring that in, and I'm going to choose count distinct here, and now just bring this on to detail. And there's our start of a table. Again, everybody's done this before, but how do I change this up? Well, number one is I keep the header, the top header here, a certain font, and make sure it's bold, and keep it consistent across the entire view. And then this other, technically also a header, but the rows header here, I just format it, and I like to change this back, instead of Tableau Medium, back to Tableau Book. And frankly, size 9 is a little bit small. Slowly getting older, and my eyesight isn't as great, so I just like to use size 11. And I'm also going to format here and change this to the overall text to size 11 as well. That makes it readable, but I haven't done really too much to this table at this point. The next thing, which is the opposite of the intuition that most folks go through is that they normally are like, let's shrink this down and get as many rows in as possible. Well, you know, if you think about our phones or our computers, like we're used to scrolling. So I'm not afraid to be like, you know what, let's actually open this up and provide a bunch of space in the actual, in my table. And what the general practice is, whatever your font size is, you want about half to the equal amount above and below for spacing. So I could double that out even and add that space, and it just makes it a little bit cleaner to look at. Like I said, the last bit is just get rid of the row banding because it just doesn't do anything. And instead going in with a row divider, but instead of sticking with the default selection of the color, is just going with like a really, really light gray just to call it out, sort of decreasing the ink to text ratio by changing the color out just a little bit. So again, this is how I format tables. This is in doing the most research I can find. These are sort of the general principles that apply across all of UX, UI. But the reality of building this table out is that I can't see any of the key metrics that I'm interested in. Really, I want to see some other metrics. Oh, I do want to call out one more trick that we can do here, is that with this design, I could also take my measure values, place this on color, and change my mark type to, let's change it to square. And we've got a highlight table or heat map, but they're all the same color. So if you ever do run into this case and you're like, well, I want to actually have each metric be a different, at least, you know, gradient for ratio or profit, because technically profit can be negative or positive, sales, which is 0 to any number, and then the distinct counts being much smaller than the sales numbers. You can just right click on measure values and choose use separate legends, and you'll have separate legends available. This is one of my favorite tips to use. But then, like, I personally am not someone who likes to have every single column colored in here. Some of them I want white, just, you know, to allow certain numbers to pop over the others. And I might want my profit ratio to pop here over all the others. So what I would do is I would actually come in and double click on the color for each of the other mark types. And I would just click on color here. And then I'm just going to set this to white. I'm just going to copy this too. I'm going to set each custom diverging to white, and I'm going to change my stepped color to 2 steps. And that creates a column that technically goes from white to white, but looks just white. Again, just repeating that same process, choosing custom diverging, typing in white, and then stepped color to 2. And that step color allows that diverging to be just the 2 matching colors here. And again, it brings it and gets rid of it and makes it look white. Background, whatever color, frankly, your background is, you would use that to call it out. But sometimes that's not enough, not just coloring a column. Sometimes we want to do something totally different. And so I went through in the last couple of weeks and like, how are the different ways that I could add context to my tables? Like I could just bold text when it's a number that's important, or I could add color to the negative values, or I, again, could color a single column. Or, you know, 1 or 2 values. There's so many different ways that I can work with these tables and the indicators that I'm putting on it. But if I rework my tables all together, I can actually come up with some much more interesting ideas of like, how do I put text in the same cell to provide context to a particular value? And that's sort of where I want to be able to take that. I'm going to show you how to build these out. So I'm just going to slide through a few more of these so that you can see some of the ideas, like putting arrows, whether it's inline text or as a separate shape here. There's so many possibilities. And when I actually think about designing tables, I don't think of tables in text. I actually think of it more in the view that you see here, which is I've got some bar charts, I've got an area chart. They're all sort of coming together as a single visualization. And the reality is if you have a table and you add some visual elements to it, like these bar charts or these Spark area charts, this is fundamentally, if you look up the definition of what a dashboard is, this is the meaning of what a dashboard is. So when you design dashboards, yeah, you can drag different bar charts and line charts and scatter plots all onto a single view. But the true meaning of a dashboard is what we see here today in this one view. And I actually want to show you how to build this, because obviously, as I hover, you will see like, oh, well, it's clear that there's multiple sheets going on here. So how do I build out this particular visualization? Well, it's clearly this one is 3 separate views, but I want to give those hints. And I'm just going to create a new sheet here and just start building. And I'm going to start with subcategory because it'll be really easy to use. There's 17 subcategories in Tableau. I'm just going to fit the entire view for the time being. And the way that I build out my tables, I don't use the measure names, measure values trick that I showed earlier where I'm double clicking. Rather, I double click on the columns and I create an ad hoc calculation. And I just type min 0.0. And what this does is it just creates a placeholder for me to create a view in the future. Right now, Tableau has changed this mark type and set it automatically to bars. We'll come back and change that in a second. And if I want to duplicate a bunch of these out, I'm just going to hold down the command button or the Apple button. I'm just going to click, drag, and move, and you'll see the little plus icon. And it's actually going to create a bunch of columns. So now that I have 4 columns, I can actually start to build out a table as I go here. And on this first
control for us Mac or us
yeah.
PC users.
Yeah, PC users. There you go. Now the min 0.0, the reason I do this is because I can control my axis, not just at the so if I did min 0, it creates a placeholder of, you'll notice, at 0. But if I add .0, when I go to edit my axis, I can have full control wherever that went. Oh, great, my Tableau is going to crash among many things that have been crashing. I'll just go ahead and open up Tableau in another window right away. Let's see.
Maybe because you have like 1,000 things open on your desktop, could it, Luke?
No, I don't have that many workbooks open. I'll just open up this other one that I have KPIs on. And the good news is that it doesn't take too long to reproduce anything. So I'm just going to, again, move as quick as possible. There it is. It crashed on my other screen. It's really the dual screen that is causing it. So min 0.0, I'm just going to duplicate these out. And what that does is it allows me to edit my axis. And if it crashes again, I know I have challenges. And when I go to fix my axis, I can choose any value that is a float value, not just integer value. So I can say from -0.1 to 1, or vice versa. I actually think I want this to be -1 to 0.1. And it'll just move those axis labels over. And what I'll end up doing here is I can put in text and I can say, all right, bring in my sales. And I actually have a calculation for last month numbers. So I'm just going to bring that out onto text. And I'm going to change my mark type here now. Instead of using the default, which is a bar chart, I'm going to change it to shape. And Tableau brings in these nice circles. I could use those as indicators if I wanted to. In fact, I could I have this percent change month over month calculation, percent last month versus last year is how I have this labeled. If I double click and just say like greater than 0, so this is now, is it greater than 0? Did it increase or decrease? If I put this on shape, I could drive and like throw some arrows on here. So my true would be arrow up. And I actually have some interface, I think is what I want to use. I have like some arrows up in here. So let me go grab one. I like to use this arrow. And then arrow down, I could also throw in an arrow down. But for my null value, where there's no change, I'll use a single pixel that is actually transparent. And that'll, when it's the time, it'll sort of show up as blank here. So now I've got some KPIs showing up. Again, the trick here is I just need to edit my axis and sort of move the values over into the place where I want them. So fixing my axis, once again, I just do -1 and 0.1, sort of bump everything into the right location. -1.1. There we go. And then again, on that marks card, so I'm just changing it over to shape and selecting. In this case, I'm not going to have dynamic shapes. I can just come in here, change my arrows, select my transparent pixel. Now that it's transparent, I could bring in profit. And again, I have profit last month already built here. I'm just going to bring that out on my label. Copiers didn't have any sales. That's why we see it blank. And what's nice with that transparent pixel as well is that I can't really highlight it. If I turn off my tooltip now, by, in this case, deleting everything, when I go to hover, Tableau doesn't highlight the mark like it does over here. So this allows me to build out my entire table using this technique. Now I just need to do some light formatting where I'm just going to add a row divider so that it's dividing out each row like I had on my example. And then it's get rid of all the extra lines that come in here. So I'm getting rid of my 0 lines, my grid lines, my trend lines, my reference lines, and my axis tick. And whatever reason, column always has an extra one in there. And also I'm going to get rid of my column divider here. So I just have row dividers on. And I have like half a table built here, but I think that's good enough for this example where we can sort of see how it's coming together. Oh, and by the way, on this second example, I did want to bring in profit that change as a secondary label. And then you'll notice that some are showing up and some are not. It's just because there's not enough space for it. But if I move that onto like a secondary row here, I'll be able to see that value show up just fine. And so one thing you should also know is that if you don't need to highlight all the text here, you could actually just click on a single point, and once you have that blue highlight, it will change the entire formatting for that entire metric. So you don't have to waste so much time being like, I need to highlight the whole thing. You just have to select a certain part of it and it'll work just fine. So there we have it. We've got some KPIs. We're halfway there. I could actually start to put this on my dashboard. And then the question always becomes like, Luke, what about the header? Well, unfortunately with this technique, also I did unhide the header. I forgot to mention that. I'm going to bring out a vertical container. And then I just need to drop that sheet onto my view here, make sure it takes up the entire view, hide the title, and hide any extra field labels that are showing up here. And then also make sure you get rid of all your outer padding. The trick of all this is to make it look like a table, even though it's not a table. I'm actually, if you think about it, like Tableau is like, don't build tables, and I actually go out of my way to format it to look like a single table through the entire view. So I don't need my containers here. And my last bit, and I can do this one of two ways, depending on if I want to make my axes dynamic or not. So right, if I wanted to filter, I would actually build a secondary sheet. I would actually duplicate this same exact sheet here. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's just duplicate this and I'll build my header from this. I'm going to remove subcategory and I'm going to remove my labels. 1, 2. I'm going to change my shape really quickly and I'll bring it to arrows and choose transparent. But then I'll just, all I have to do is click and do an ad hoc calculation. I'll call it sales and bring that out on label. And we've got our label. And same thing here. I can just do profit and get rid of my other values and put this on profit. And the last thing I just need to do now is actually bring that new sheet that we just created out onto my view, which, what did I call it? 36.2. Bring it out onto my view, hide the title, and we're almost there. We do have to do a little bit of formatting because this won't line up one for one by any means yet. You're like, oh, well, how are we going to get that table to line up so nicely because I don't have the header like I do over here? Well, if you go back to your sheet and you just double click on rows and just type 2 quotes so you have empty text, that'll actually build a header for you. So there's our header now, and we can just go onto our dashboard. And now it's just a matter of getting rid of top and getting rid of that padding and then just sort of moving this over. And that's it. Like that's more or less how I'm going to build out my tables. So I know this seems like a little, oh, you know, I would also, by the way, select a different color font as we've sort of discussed. Like I need this header font to be a little bit more bold, but I would also go out of your way to make sure that you don't choose, if you're like designing truly for accessibility, you shouldn't choose a black font. It actually is tough for someone who's dyslexic to read a straight black and white font. Rather, like the headers you see here, it might make sense to go and change that color to you know, just a slightly lighter gray. So you see that the color just changed over on this column. And then if I do the same thing, I'm going to just change the font color just a little bit lighter so that it's not so intense. It actually makes it a lot more readable, a lot more accessible for someone who is dyslexic when they're reading. So now I have a table and somehow I lost my headers just a little bit. There they are. And that's it. That's you know, how I go about building my own tables. So let's you know, I'm looking at the clock and I've actually somehow, despite the technical bits, made it through on time. And I just want to wrap up and talk about like what we've come up with here. Well, number one, we talked about some table ideas. Actually, I'll show you the rest of my table ideas in a second here. But just to wrap up, you know, tables plus visual elements, that's a dashboard. And what do we know? Pretty much that every user loves a dashboard. So it only makes sense that you start incorporating these design elements. And the way I look at these tables is if I'm really designing it for my end users, they love it, they're going to engage with it more. It's going to hopefully lead to better decision making. And that's my whole argument for tables here, is that they don't have to be static. They don't have to be boring. Oh, I forgot it crashed. Let me open that up quick. We'll see if it opens up and we can take a look at like the last few ideas of what I've got. But if they're, while we're waiting, oh, that's not too bad. If there's any thoughts, if anybody has any questions, oh, there we go, we're back. Let's see, I think I was somewhere around here. Just like, right, I'll just quickly run through a few other ideas, whether you're using spark lines, and I'll just like, these are just the same elements you put in a dashboard, right? Instead of having a line chart, like 1 or 2 line charts, I just, you know, back them up to each other here within the actual visualization. Let's combine some of them together here. I'm a big fan of the Spark bar inside of a table. Again, instead of having a filter and having a really big bar chart, I just narrow it down to a small multiple here for bar charts. But because you're using this technique as well, you can actually start throwing things in the header here, which is a faux header. Like this is just actually a separate sheet. And I've decided to, for every subcategory, there's 3 categories in this data set, just call it out with some sort of custom icon. Or in this case, I just, you know, I'm just playing around with different techniques. But one of my favorites to do is actually when I build a table is to actually drive in, and this is gonna, I know this doesn't work because I've broken it, but you can actually drive in and it will actually, you can build something that feels like an overlay. And this overlay is actually just a separate dashboard. And normally, if I didn't break things, I would click the X and it would just take me back to this other dashboard. So it's just navigating back and forth with a dashboard action. Yeah, this is actually, I sort of, when I'm building visualizations, I sort of make this little trick happen and people are like, oh, that's so cool. What did you do? Well, it's two dashboards. Ranking things in the front again. I like to really do that. Just everything gets a rank and a change over time. It's a nice little touch. And you can do fun things, right? You don't have to just stick with bar charts. Like I just add some stars here to call out the top performers, or filled, so like half filled dots based on indicators. And you can also, what's nice about this, because this is technically not just a single sheet, you can make things that look like lists directly on your dashboard. And I always am like thinking through, how do I make a list so that I can get the next level of detail right in my tables. Yeah, I think the last one is that I just have one regular one I like to do is percent to plan. So how are we doing versus target, to quickly be able to give a sense of a particular dashboard. Anyway, I'm right on time. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take a few at this point.
Did anyone else feel like they were watching Luke compete in an Iron Viz challenge or something? It's like,
this is my slow. We're trying to go as slow as I could.
oh Lord. No, that was really awesome.
Thank
And someone had asked about your, if this workbook or a workbook with some examples of these tables were available, and Katrina, as on point as she is, has put the link to Luke's examples of some of these in the chat. So definitely go grab that.
Yeah, it's a popular resource right now. That's for certain. As
Indeed.
I pitch
And-
tables, I'm on the train of pitching tables to everybody.
And don't forget to give Luke credit if you end up using it. So at least on Tableau Public, right?
It's all right. I don't like, it's a free resource. Anybody can use it. I'm probably not going to have time to frankly respond to it. Just being nice about it.
That's okay. You can give Luke credit and he doesn't have to know about it. All right, Luke, I have one question. Is it like, do you ever put any column dividers? Are there ever any instances
yeah.
where it's good to
Oh
use
yeah.
a
So
vertical?
yeah, I don't particularly create another sheet that is an actual column divide. I get totally your point, but yes, absolutely. What I'll do in that case is I'll just think about my padding number, that when I'm editing my axis, how far I want to push that over. And then because I'm using separate sheets instead of like one sheet, I can just, this is also another nice thing and another, future plan for Tableau. I know on their roadmap is to have like individual cell sizes to be able to, change the size. On a current table, if you change one, you change all. If you have separate sheets, then you can change one, set that width, and that allows you to, essentially give the right appropriate space to any particular metric that you really want to give, or in this case, like add that padding in, because what I'll end up doing, I have an example that I'm actively working on right now. You'll have to excuse that it's in progress. So it's just with Superstore, but I'm trying to pull that exact trick off. It's not quite there yet. Like I said, it's in progress, but just like, hey, here's my padding to break out my profit measures versus my margin and my lost revenue. So I totally get the need to, like, frankly, it should be broken out if you're thinking about how you'll interact with data, or your customer or your users are working with it. They probably have certain measures clustered together in their mind, and being able to interact and have the appropriate spacing is a really important feature that any dashboard should have. I just have lots of workbooks open. It's the story of it all.
It's like an insight into what the inside of your brain looks like.
That's why I have a Mac, so that when you see my desktop, I'm one of the few people who I'm probably not, but at least I admit to not organizing my desktop, because I don't get to actually look at it too often.
All right, what other questions do we have for Luke?
Luke, what stood out for you from TC20? Or do people go to you for the answers?
What did I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, one, I will definitely 100% say that I did not attend many sessions at all. I only did a couple. I was particularly interested in the new features, and therefore I'm a little bit biased in saying that I think what stood out to me was a serious shift in the tool, particularly desktop, moving from, desktop always was like, here's new features for the analysts. And it's very much new features at this point for governance and for the folks who are managing the content, and less for the creators of the content. That is actually what stood out the most to me, of being like, very interesting. And maybe that's right. Tableau has also shifted in conference, talking about features that are coming, 2-3 years down the line, to what's coming out next quarter. So maybe it's just, it's very typical for Tableau to their Q4 release to be very much more technical focused and less feature driven for the analyst. So there's definitely some of that. But that's what stood out to me of being like, oh, this is definitely ramping up and focusing much more on admin side than the developer side. And of course, everything going to web is going to take up a lot of resources of the developers. But I spent a lot of time doing Tableau doctor sessions, and that's really where I took time in.
Cool. Thanks, Luke. Other questions for Mr. Stanke? Sorry, my dog just like got scared and ran out of the room. I don't know if you could hear that. All right, cool. Well, we have 4 minutes left. Probably not a lot of time to engage in a best thing I learned or group therapy. Unless somebody has something really quick that they'd like to share, we'll probably wrap it up and let everyone get on with their day. Anybody have anything?
Thanks for hosting.
You're so welcome. Vince, are you gonna say something? I see you're unmuted.
No, I apologize that I was only able to make it for the last few minutes, but yeah, great stuff. It's what I love about seeing the kinds of work that you do, Luke, is that you bring something new and elegant to a very business centric use case for data visualization, and that's really refreshing. I think it's hard to pull off elegance with things like tables, but it's inspiring to see.
Appreciate it. I mean, I certainly try to. It is at the thought of my mind of like, how do we make tables enjoyable to look at? And yeah, so certainly thank you very much for that.
All right. I am gonna have to let you guys go. I think my dog is having a seizure. So
Oh no.
All right. Thank you all. I'm going to end this. I don't know if it's going to end for everyone else. If it doesn't, feel free to hang out. Otherwise, talk to you all soon. Thank you.
Bye, guys.